Hi everybody, thank you very much for being here today. My name is Jean-François Maheu. I'm going to talk to you about didactical issues in the work of mathematics teacher advisors. I am a professor in the mathematics department at the University of Montreal. I am part of the math education section. It's a group inside the department, and what I'm going to share today is in part works that I'm doing with some of my colleagues. We have a research group that works around the question of how we train teachers, pre-service teachers, but also in-service teachers. And one of our research project is about pedagogical advisors, or teacher advisors, if you wish. So, maybe to begin with, just a few words about those advisors. Because one big question is, who are they? What are we talking about? And the fact is that they are people of many names. There are many ways to call them. There's no consensus. So sometimes you will read advisory teachers. Other times you'll know about educational consultants. We can call them instructional advisors, pedagogical consultant, special advisory teachers, teacher advisors, and so on. So there's no clear limit and no clear words on how to talk about those people. But mostly what I'm concerned with today is those professionals whose work consists in supporting teachers and sometimes other people in the school on issues related to teaching and learning. For example, around assessment or inclusion or technology or the use of other tools in the classroom, curriculum development, planning, on special topics, for example, specialized in mathematics, and so on. And what can we say about those people? First is that they seem to be experienced, knowledge experts in a way or another, and their work constitute in contributing to teachers and others' professional development. So who are they? Well, we don't have a clear picture, right? Only small studies in research about those advisors. Most of them seems to be experienced teachers, often with even more than 30 years of teaching experience behind them. And naturally, then they are of a certain age, right? Most of them are over 40, and there's maybe 1.2 female to male ratio. It seems that there's a little bit more female doing this kind of work than male. This is not entirely surprising. We also know that many of them engaged, or at least considered at some point, engaging into graduate studies. So that's another one of their characteristics. And in most cases, there are no formal trainings for those people to become advisors, teacher advisors. There's very little organized development opportunities also for those people, according to research. What are their roles? Can we be a little bit more specific on this? Well, yeah, some research have been conducted in order to understand what exactly these people do, and it turns out that they have many different roles. They are sometimes going to act as trainers or as a support person, as counselors, as change agents too. Often this is very close to their relationship with research, but it can also be a request from the institution. If there's a curricular reform, they are going to be put in charge of creating change in the schools. They are also seen as content experts. They also need to sometimes act as field experts, collaborators, and sometimes even evaluators to assess the work of teachers. And this is already an important point to note, that when that function, that role is present, it's very often in conflict with other parts of their job, the other roles that we see here. But that's a lot, right? So do they all do all of this? Well, the answer is no, of course not. We can talk about maybe a broad, a general genre, right? those people all share similar functions, but there are so many subgenres, special kinds of advisor. For example, based on interest or expertise. We can think about some of them are specialized in special need children, or in classroom management, or in teaching technology, or on a specific discipline in mathematics, and so on. We also know that they tend to be involved in many projects with different functions. So those roles that we were seeing here, depending on who they are working with and what is exactly the project at hand, they're going to take some of those roles, and others are going to show up in a different project. So that's another one of the specifics of this profession. And we also noticed from research that they are very often in charge of their own work, right? So they are the one that we leave in charge of choosing who they are going to work with, what project they are going to get engaged in, and so on. Now, how can one be a good advisor, right? What can we say about the art of being an advisor? And this is also where understanding what those people do and who they are is getting interesting. So we've noticed that inside a same subgenre, there are also many styles, many variations. For example, among mathematics teachers, advisor, those specialized in mathematics, they have different ways of being advisors, of doing that. And sometimes, of course, there's something specific to a person. Someone likes working with small groups or in one-to-one interaction and so on. There are preferences, individual preferences. But we also know that a lot of time they work in response to a context, because they work on different projects, because they have different intentions. Sometimes they are going to adopt a different style. If they have to work with a small or with a large group, they're going to do things a little bit differently. So this is something also interesting to observe. Maybe one clarification that we can make: are we talking about didactical or pedagogical advisors? What would be the difference? Well, both of them can be found, and I would say that they belong to different subgenres. What is specific to the didactical advisors is that they have a special interest for given disciplines, for example, mathematics, and they are very much concerned with the relationship between the topic, the mathematics, and the students or the teachers. They are not focused on more general pedagogy or the relationship, for example, between students and teachers. They will always bring back those questions to the discipline. So I have an example here. So because this gives them a specific entry point, a way of looking into a phenomenon. So, for example, if teachers complain about students not doing their homework, what a didactical advisor will do is to actually sit down and look at the homeworks themselves, examine them, discussing them, in order to understand what exactly is asked from the students, why is that required for them to do, how is it contributing to the teaching and learning of the topic, how does the teacher actually go back to the homework in classroom and clarify or ask questions or verify answers, and so on. So they're going to always go back to for example, the mathematics questions themselves, in order to understand what is going on and how things could be made differently. Now that we've talked a little bit about this profession more generally, I want to go back to this question of the didactical issues in the work of mathematics teacher advisor, because this was one of the questions that we had in our research project. So, like I said earlier, this is a contribution that is part of an ongoing project. So I'm situated in Canada. I work in Quebec. That's the part that you see there in red. And since 2016, we've been running collaboration project with teachers advisors, and there was one specific that took place over 4 years or so that was focused on problem solving in mathematics and the work of didactical consultants. That's the way we called them back then. Like I said, there are many ways to name them. And what the research was like, very broadly, very generally, we had work sessions over those 4 years with 10 advisors and a group of researchers. We were sitting around the table discussing what can we do in regard with problem solving in mathematics. And one of our goals was to better understand the professional activities of those advisors, and they were coming from different part of the province, not just from one school board, but really different place. So they could share different experiences. I've put here an example of a publication that we have in English, and you can find it on the GRFM website. You have the address down there. So if you're a little bit curious and you want to know more, this would be one example of a paper you can find and read. How are didactical issues involved in their work? So this group of consultants that we were working with. Well, first, to answer this question, we need to become a little bit more specific. So what do we mean by didactical issues? What does it mean, didactical? There are different ways to try and come up with a definition. There is one, for example, by Vergniaud that you can see here. And he's saying more or less that, having a didactical perspective means studying different stage of learning and highlighting important role of all stage that play in the work of the teachers, the teacher as a mediator between the student and knowledge. So again, it's the question of knowledge that is at the center. So what are we talking about? What is the topic? What are those mathematical ideas that we are working on? The object of the analysis overall is the process of building the relationship to knowledge for students, right? And so again, there are many different entry points in the didactical work of the teacher, but it's content specific. So we were working with mathematic advisors. It's the mathematic reflection, didactical issues in relation with mathematics that we were concerned with. And it also concerns very specific situation and activity. This is what didactical issue mean. It's not just fractions, but it's fraction in this problem, in that activity, right? We want to go deep details inside what is taking place. It's a very fine-grained analysis of the concept at play, right? And all the concepts that can be around it. So if I'm saying fractions, then what are fractions related to? Or if it's function, what kind of function, where the function come from? So what is the part of this mathematical concept in the activity? Is it something that comes at the beginning or at the end? Is it a prerequisite knowledge or something that we want the students to construct, make sense of? In what ways, and then what are different means or ways to work on that with that mathematical ideas? What are different representation? What are different definitions? What are different ways of understanding them? Are there any known students' difficulties? So this is what it means to take a didactical perspective on something. And so what we've seen from our research is that the action of those advisors can be characterized from this didactical perspective in certain ways, right? So first, there's no specific order because this is all coming together. on the one side, there's a perception of the discipline of mathematics that is very important to their work. The people we were working with, they really strongly believed in mathematics as a meaningful human activity, something that offers way of thinking, something that can be relevant to students' life. And this was always very present in the way that they worked with teachers and what they wanted to do with them and how they were acting as consultant. There's also their understanding of teaching and learning mathematics that was also extremely important and always present. So, for example, they were big believers in the student-centered approach. They believed that we should make room for struggle, to be supportive, to welcome diversity in the students' work. They really strongly believed in students' capability. They can do this. There's no inner limit to what we can ask for students. But also, it's important that teaching or learning have a sense of purpose, that they believe it's important to do whatever they were doing. So their understanding of teaching and learning was really strongly present in the way that they were acting as consultant. Another aspect that is interesting is to look into the different means and ways of doing that they were sharing with us and actually using in their work. And we could see that, for example, they were very often strongly drawing on research, but also other kinds of resources. They were really kind of brokers in that sense, and to bring things for the teachers. We could also see them doing very fine analysis of concepts or the problems or the activities, and this was an important part of their work. They were trying to look for possibilities for limits in whatever they came across with. And another key aspect of what it meant for them to be an advisor was to engage with teachers in all those various ways. So they wanted also teachers to be interested in research, in finding other research, in analyzing activities, and looking for possibilities and limits, and so on. I have a little star there. I would like to just go for a small parenthesis. I just want to give you one example of how we can go much deeper in details on that question. So, for example, we would see them, examine a mathematical problem from very different angles. It was very common for them, if they come across an exercise or a problem that students could be working on, to look at the problems with the hat, right, with the perspective of the creator. So how did the person who created that problem might have seen it? What was the intention? And then they will also look at the problems with the student's perspective and the teacher's perspective. So how would the student see this problem? How would the teacher see this problem? And then they would also ask themselves how it can be presented to students. So from a teacher's perspective, what are the possibilities? But also for themselves as consultants. So how could we present this problem to teachers? So that's another way to look at the problem and question it. They will, of course, examine it very carefully to try to understand what is at play mathematically, right? What could be difficult in this problem? What is easy? How can it be solved? What are different ways to solve it? And then examine and discuss what could be a good answer, what could be a bad answer, why would that be better than this, and how could one find this answer? What are different strategies that can be used to find these answers, and how could the problem be modified? They would never just stop at whatever they found. They also always wanted to revisit. And so what would it change if we do it this way or that way, if we change this number for that other one? And why would we want to keep the problem as it is or turn it into a different one? So this were very important ways for them to prepare for advising teachers. And this is exactly, again, the kind of things that they wanted to do with the teachers as part of advising. This was interesting for them because it allowed them to identify important didactical aspects. So all these questions, all these different and again, this is just one small example, right? This was a good way for them to identify important aspect of, for example, doing problem solving in the classroom. They would identify, for example, the need to deal with the unpredictable, or with the students' various pace, or with the diversity of solution, and then discuss this and try to find answers to try to better understand what is at play and how this can be dealt with. Right? And so from all this, they would devise ways of working with teachers. And again, not one, but many of them, many possibilities. They would say, okay, so maybe we could present them this as an interesting activity to do with their students, or maybe we could confront them with this problem because it's very ambiguous and it's difficult to get your head around it, and so it raised good questions. Or they could show them some student strategy and say, here are 5 ways to solve this problem. What do you think of that? Or have them solve some problems, right? And so they would, for example, say, okay, so this is a very good problem, but to really understand what's going on, you have to try to solve it yourself. So we could do that with teachers. We could give them this problem and they work on it, and then we come back and discuss what happened. Or for example, discuss possible mistakes that students could make on a given problem, and that become an object of conversation, or ask teachers to create or modify problems. So these are all ways of working with teachers as advisors that they would use, and they can come up with those ideas very specifically after examining a problem from different angles, for example. So this is what I mean by how their work is characterized, how their actions as advisors is characterized by various means and ways of doing they're very specific to the discipline, right? And then again, there's another aspect that is quite important to the way they do what they do, and it's the finality, the intention they have in terms of professional development. So a lot of what they will do is to try and bring the teachers to grow as reflective practitioners, right? They saw the teachers as knowledgeable, as respectable, and it was very important for them to recognize that the teachers were subject to constraints, that yes, of course, they were sometimes or even often resistant to change, but they are capable of changing. They are capable of trying new things, of being interested. And what matters is really to bring them into thinking, into finding their own solutions, into becoming more reflective about their practice and so on. And this was a very core issue, again, behind the work of those advisors. And one way to wrap all that together, if you want, is to see that what they're actually doing is a didactical problematization of the subject, of the issue. What they're doing is to problematize. So what do we mean? Problematize is to make something into an issue. It's to make something into a problem. By considering, elements that are involved as challenge, you could say problems, or means to address them. So there is this thing, now we have to turn this situation into a problem, into an issue, into something that we're going to be working on. But when you ask the question, you also somehow already frame the answers, ways of answering, not the specific answer, but some ways of addressing it. And so there are 2 levels. On the one hand, there's what we can call the laying out of the land. What is this about? So problem solving in the classroom, what is this about? And a big part of their work is to try and clarify what this is about. And this comes with the expression and the clarification of intentions. So what do we want to do here? What is important? What are our goals in relation with this phenomenon? And this will also be helpful in creating a question, a problem, an issue, right? And after that, we need to go deeper. So what is related to that? What are connections or underlying element that comes with that? And all of this, like I said, is part of identifying, if you wish, the problem that they want to solve, but also envisioning various course of action. Because it's never for them about finding a ready-to-hand turnkey solution. This is not what advising is about for those people. Like you see it in the blue box, this didactical problemization is not only for them, but it's also for the teachers. This is what they want to do. They want the teachers to problematize didactically, from a didactical perspective, whatever issue they face, they encounter during their work. And as advisors, what they want to do is not to provide ready-to-use solutions, but actually they prepare themselves to go work with teachers to create answers, to create solutions together, solutions that would be relevant for those teachers, that would be situated in their context, and they want those answers to emerge, to be a result of the work of them and the teachers together, again, to empower teachers to realize that they are creating their own solutions to the problems that they come to identify, and that they can do this by creating the problem as a didactical problem, by doing all the things that I was showing you here. And again, something that is interesting to highlight is how this is a very mostly responsive attitude from the part of those advisors, right? They always want to act in a responsive way. They get into a project, they want to know what is the need there, and they are going to adapt. Now, maybe just a few words to finish. So, what can we say about the Cambodian context in relation with all this? From what I've seen, I think that teacher advisors is the most needed profession in Cambodia. So they are rare. That's one thing we can say, right? There's no institutional structures for them in school boards or at the ministry or nowhere. And maybe a part of that is because of the traditional forms of mentoring in Cambodian schools. So if you know a little bit about that, you'll understand what I'm talking about, the way that new teachers get mentored kind of naturally by older, more experienced teachers in the school. So maybe this is part of why it seems to be a little bit less indispensable. But I still think that it's most needed profession, in part because it would create a pathway for excelling teachers. It would be a good way to promote excellence in teachers, in teaching, because these teachers will have somewhere to go. They might have a goal in becoming something more than just a teacher or well-regarded teachers in their school. And I think that it would always also support the spreading of innovation and the development of local and culturally relevant answer to many challenges faced by educators in Cambodia. So if those great teachers can not only help, the teachers in their school, but also in many other schools, this would be fantastic. This is something that we want. And from the way that we've seen that advisors work with teachers, it's also not only the spreading of answers, but actually the spreading of competency to find answers and help teachers develop. So perhaps some inspiration from abroad. So like I said, there's not a lot of work of research being done on advisors in education, but there are some some work exists, right? And with different models that could inspire Cambodia to develop its own model. And I think that frameworks that exist could be adapted. Some of them have very adaptable, flexible way of thinking that can be included if this is something that we were going to do. But I also want to insist. I think it's very important that we have a Cambodian design. That we create our own approach in Cambodia. That it's not just the mapping or the copying of a model that exists. It's going to have to be relevant to the Cambodian structures and context and so on. You have here an example with a link of a framework that was developed in Quebec, where I work. You can click there. This is an English version, and I'm sure it's going to be something interesting for you to read. And maybe if I may just insist on two little advice on the matter, if this is a project that eventually really start to take shape in Cambodia. I think it's really important to keep the evaluation function separate from the work of the advisors. They should not be evaluating teachers. It's really preferable to keep that apart. You can create an inspector function or whatever, but the advisors should stay advisors. And the other one is to make room for diversity of expertise. So it can be tempting to say we're going to create this profession, we're going to have advisors, and this is the way that it's going to work, and to choose a model and go with that. But I think it's important to realize that there is something fruitful in having different kinds of advisors, and some that are maybe, like I said, focus on mathematics, or focus on special needs, or focus on technology, or focused on classroom management. And the idea is that you have different kind of people that can interact with different settings, different questions in different ways, and you will never find a global perfect solution for everything. But you want to find many ways to improve in from different perspective, and act on different aspect of the issues. And so make room for that kind of diversity would be important. Okay, so that's all for me. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any other questions, or you want to follow up, or whatever, please feel free to send me an email. You have my address there, or visit my website, or whatever. I'm very happy to keep this conversation going. Thank you.